Oh, there we go. So if you're in the back and you can't hear me, just go like this, because sometimes AV, I tend to be cursed. After that introduction, I have to say I have a lot of imposter syndrome. This conference has really special meaning to me. I am from the area. It's where I learned Python. It's where I learned open source, and it's been an amazing journey, and I hope to share it with all of you. If you're a complete beginner, that's totally cool. I'm a complete beginner every day, and one of the things that I want to talk with you about today is question-driven development, how to guide your Python code and career to success. So when I was a toddler, I just asked one question over and over and over again. Why? 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 And now that I'm an adult, I may be equally as annoying because I still ask, why? Why? Why should we do this? So new software doesn't happen with magic. Well, maybe now it's possible to write new software with magic. But I came up with this concept of question-driven development after spending the last 6 months really digging deep into AI again. And I spent a lot of time reflecting and challenging my assumptions about what I was hearing about AI and what I was really experiencing in practice. So when I asked why recently, the hype was not in sync with my actual experience. So today, I want to share with you my approach for building new and solutions and Python code. So I talked about, when in doubt, start with a question, and why is a pretty good one. The foundation of science is inquiry and the scientific method, and we start by asking questions. And the primary reason we do that is to gain knowledge. And I think one of the things that's super nice is questions let you not just gain knowledge, but move forward iteratively. And it allows you to think critically, and it also helps you build confidence over time. So I'm Carol Willing. I've seen this process work in many domains. So I want to start with a question. Why are we here? Why am I here? Well, I hope that we will have a conversation this morning. I hope I will inspire you to be your best Python coder or whatever language you enjoy coding in. Or maybe you love writing documentation or do design. There's a place in the Python community for everyone. While I'm not going to dive deep into any technical topics, I'll be around all day for those that wish to do so. And the slate of speakers that are here will do a far better job than I can. It is an amazing slate, and all of these folks have touched me in some way or another in my own learning. And for that, I thank them, and I'm super excited that they get to share their thoughts with you as well. So I hope that I will leave you with a process to let you create and build new things, which I think is different than things that have been built before. So my question to you is, why are you here today? I've told you why I'm here, and I think each of you have different motivations for being here. My San Diego Python peeps, we started a study group over a decade ago, I think now, and it started with a couple people, me helping them install Python, which was a little hard to do at the time. Maybe it still is. And then just at a coffee shop. And then it kind of grew, and the next week there was more people, and people like Trey showed up, and then more people, and then people like Melanie and David Lord and others really continued to strengthen the Python community down in San Diego. So whatever your motivation for being here, I hope this talk will help you get to where you would like to go. So what should we explore? Coding is messy. There's bugs, it's a nonlinear process, and one of the things that's super important is that we trust ourselves. If you're a beginner, trust yourself that you will understand the code snippets that are in front of you. If you're an expert, even if you understand it all, which I'm somewhat skeptical because I think I understand just a sliver of the vast amount of computer science and even Python that's out there, how would you improve what you're doing? How would you improve the knowledge that you have? And most importantly, I think keeping moving forward is super critical as we try and do work. Sometimes the smallest step is what leads us to success. So I want you to make up your own mind during this talk. You don't need my validation to be a wonderful Pythonista. You don't need the validation of the person sitting next to you or the rock star programmer that is on the next Zoom call with you. All you need is your own confidence. So, question-driven development. The world is vast. It's constantly changing. There's a lot of uncertainty, particularly now. And it's happening in real time, much like our ocean next to us. Things are changing. And I want to talk about how we can change using Python, AI, and communication, which I think is one of the most under-recognized skill. Because we're not just communicating with individuals, we're actually communicating with the computers and the hardware that is doing the work for us. So let's start with AI. There's a lot of hype. Use this tool, use Gemini, use Claude, use ChatGPT. Oh my gosh, it's going to code. And, you know, there's this feeling that we can get on this magic carpet and it will do everything for us. And we hear more and more every day. And I have sort of gotten to the point of just saying, okay, that's nice, that's all news. And I don't have to watch all the news. But it does feel like the fire hose of information that is coming at you. And oh my gosh, you're going to get left behind. So no fear. We can ride this AI wave. And it starts with inquiry. Trusting yourself and creating a hypothesis or setting a small goal and then seeing what happens. So where to start with AI? I would recommend starting with the free tools and try multiple of them. Try and break them. Sandbox your work. And for the security folks in here, be really careful with your credentials. Agentic AI, where you have workflows that do things for you. You wouldn't leave your keys on a park bench for anybody to come by and use. I don't think you should be doing the same with AI. So, all right, so we're going to ask some questions, then we're going to experiment. So I've been on this planet for 59 amazing years, and I've spent 49 years programming for fun. I started off with an outreach program at Bell Labs, learning to program on a mainframe. There wasn't even a monitor. It was just you type it in, the little thing comes and printed it back out. Those of you that are maybe my vintage know what the was. It was actually the printer printing. I used some of the first Apple II computers, which had, instead of hard drives, a tape cassette drive to store things. And I learned a lot about exploration and question and answers because there weren't many tutorials then. And if they were there, they were printed in a magazine, and you had to type all the code back in yourself again. I also spent 38 years experimenting with AI. In the late 80s, I was doing a master's degree at MIT, and we were working with expert systems. Neural networks were around, but we didn't have the compute power to really make use of it like we have had the last decade. And one of my professors, John Little, he always said, start with the user. And he's somebody who developed lots of models. And he really felt like if we want the user to use a model, we need to make it theirs. We need to make it an extension of how they think and how they analyze their own work, because we want it to be trustworthy. I've spent 13 years with Python. I was an absolute complete beginner 13 years ago. Southern California Linux Expo was my gateway after a long break raising my kids. And before I was an engineering director before I took a 12-year break. So for those of you that maybe had to take a 1 or 2 year break, do know you can come back. It might not be easy, and you might have to put some effort in, but it is possible. And I think oftentimes we don't say that enough. So today, I'm still using AI. I'm still experimenting with it, and I'm experimenting it from the context of what it can do for science. Can it help us with drug discovery? Nipari is a project that I work on. It's a 3D visualization for scientists that often are used with microscopy and looking at cells. And the next step is really challenging the answers you get to the questions and experimentation that you've done. Is this slop? Is this too much cognitive load? So here's what I have found in the last 6 months of really intensively using the different LLM tools. I think it does a really good job of visualizing an unfamiliar code base. I think it also does a good job of explaining modules such as what's happening. This is, in fact, a tool that I was using when I first started working on the Nipari code base. It's called CodeViz. And let's see if this works. It basically lets you put in a human prompt and say, hey, give me some information about the event handling system in Nipari. And then it comes back and it creates a visualization of your code. And what it also allows you to do is each of those, I'm going to call them boxes, but they have rounded edges, so I'm sure there's another name for it. But you can click into them, and it can go to the source code with which generated the thoughts within the code. And I found that really useful and a time saver. I could do it manually, but it did help me visualize what was going on. Another thing I found useful is that when I'm iterating through a complex environment setup in Python, such as Nipari, where it's got GPUs, it has Qt, which is a user interface layer, it's got an event layer, much less all the science and the 3D visualization that we're doing. And I used Claude Code, although you could use others, and this was the paid version. And basically the other day I had to fix a bug, and I was trying to get up and running on my system. And what I did was I asked Claude to iteratively walk me through why my system wasn't working the way I expected to be working in terms of just installing and running tests. And it did that. What it found was there was some between the version of Python I was using, there was a version of PyQt that was incompatible with my Python. And so what it did was it iteratively wrote and changed a make file so that I could build the code, fix the bug, and move on. I could have done it manually. It would have taken me much longer. So, okay, we've talked about what it does well. What could be improved? And I think generating new code, I always regret when I generate code with an LLM because I oftentimes find myself rewriting it or taking longer than it would have been if I had just taken the time to actually write it. Some of the refactoring of existing code could be improved as well. Oftentimes, it may refactor the code, but it may not refactor it to performant code, which you as humans might be able to do much more effectively. It's not awesome at isolating bugs, and it will hallucinate. And then part of the challenge that I ask myself is, do the results make sense? About a year ago, I asked one of the services, and I said, make me a picture of a woman with late-stage Alzheimer's. And that's what it returned. So the person on the right is actually my mom, who maybe was 1 month before she passed, and late-stage Alzheimer's. She was happy. She could laugh. She could smile. She enjoyed playing with yarn and stuffed animals. And I ask you, do the results that got returned make sense? Are they accurate? Are they biased? And what conclusions would I draw from the image that was returned to me? I would have thought late-stage Alzheimer's was a horrid experience where you're in a dark room and left alone and have no real joy in life left. And that wasn't the case. So overall, what are my conclusions about AI today? AI is a tool. It's not a person. A person chooses an AI tool or an LLM tool or whatnot. Each tool, much like all the other tools we use, have limitations and places where they excel and places where they're just not so great. You want to fit the tool to the job and minimize the harm done by the tool. So we've asked some questions. We've experimented a bit. We've challenged the results that we're getting. And now, as part of our scientific process, we're going to just repeat it. So if you're interested in AI, what are some of the things that you can do next? There are, on the left-hand side, some people that have done a lot of really great work. On the right-hand side, there's some really accessible tools and information out there in the wild that will make you successful. Please don't feel like you have to scribble this down quickly. Some of the slides have QR codes, so you can actually get to the slides at some point. So, question-driven development, what is it? It's inquiry, experimentation, challenging your assumptions and results, and repeating the process. So, how does that relate to Python? Well, I have a few more questions for you. How do you choose your Python version? If you're doing new projects, I would use the latest stable Python, which is Python 3.13. If you're working on an existing project, you're going to want to use whatever the project is using, and then consider, is it time to upgrade, or is it not make good business sense to upgrade? How should you install Python? And this is really not just for the beginners, but also for the advanced folks, and I'll get to that in a second. If you're a beginner in Python, you could install it from the Python website. I actually think it's far easier to use UV, which will install a Python binary, so everything's all built for you, and it gets you up and running much quicker. If you're experienced and you want to try the cutting edge, it also will allow you to install Python's free threading build or any version of Python that is under development. So that's one way to get Python. How do we try a Python library? Some of you might have heard of virtual environments, Conda, pip, Hatch, Poetry, Pixie, UV. It can be difficult. And what I would say is if you're just trying to do something and just test something, UVX is a good option. So Rough is a linter and formatter for Python code. You can just type UVX roughcheck code.py and it will do the work for you. It'll install it in an environment and make it work. Say I want to just use MyPy for typing, I can do the same thing. Or maybe I want to try Ty, which is a new type checker. I can also just do UVX Ty on that same file. So how do I create a successful Python project? There are many ways, and you'll learn more from the wonderful speakers ahead. But in general, I say use the tools and templates that are out there that people have already vetted for production work. And UV is being used more and more. That's not to say that pip and virtualenv isn't useful. If you're working with GPUs, Pixie can be a really awesome option because it will allow you to create both the GPU and non-GPU environments in a consistent way that allows us to do reproducible science. Pre-commit helps you kind of check stuff before. If you're doing testing, especially if you're interested in web development, Playwright is a great option alongside PyTest. It lets you kind of look at and script tests. Let CI automate the boring stuff, but very important stuff. And the last one I had mixed feelings about because when I came to Python, I came because it didn't have typing and things got out of my way. Now, would I deploy a large code base without typing? Absolutely not. It does catch errors and it is useful. But for iterative development, it may not be the best option. So where can you follow Python's development? There are many blog posts that come out after PyCon, and also discuss.python.org can be a good way to keep up with what's going on. Thank you, David Lord, for moderating some of the stuff that maybe isn't as fun to read, but it is a place that we use to discuss PEPs, which are enhancement proposals to the language. And another question is, what if my project needs more speed? Python is often said to be a slow language because of the global interpreter lock. If you don't understand what that is, don't worry about it. It just means it can only do one thing at a time effectively. So when you're trying to get more speed, I often say, get it working, profile it, and then optimize it. And one of the cool tools that I want to point out is PySpy, which lets you profile running processes. And it can be very helpful if you're seeing bugs, memory leaks, degradation of service, all of a sudden things get slower. So I leave that to you to kind of look at in your leisure. If you're not doing production code at the moment, I would encourage you to try free-threaded Python. There's some really good documents about it. Or the Python JIT as it comes out in the next couple releases. Or you could just do what my friend recommends and prototype in Python and move performance bottlenecks to Rust. And I will leave it to him to kind of explain why, but I think it is a pragmatic solution and something we're doing in sciences. So we've talked about AI. We've talked about Python in question-driven development. So what does question-driven development have to do with communication? Well, we're going to start and look about how we connect and collaborate with each other. So my first question is, how do I maintain, contribute, learn, teach, whatever the subject of the day is or the Python element of the day? And I often say, understand your why. Why do you want to learn this? Why do you want to maintain this? Why do you want to contribute to this? And it's for a few reasons. If you want to try and follow your own North Star, because you are an individual, understanding your motivations lets you have resilience and persistence when things get hard, when things keep breaking. If you're feeling like you're missing out and changing from library to library or tool to tool, it helps you understand what your path is and what is most important in the use case that you have. And it is very easy, even with somebody who's got decades of experience, to feel like an imposter. And so understanding your why helps you believe in yourself. So how do I avoid reinventing the wheel? And no, that was not a bad pun on packaging. There are some organizations out there, this is in the science community, but there's some in the web development community as well. PyOpenSci, Scientific Python gives you best practices of how to structure projects, which tools to use, and PyOpenSci in particular has a packaging guide and workshops that let you package your first project. If you haven't done that before, it can be really helpful to have some hand-holding. So a week ago, down in Ocean Beach, in our little San Diego community, there was a lost Python. Yes, folks, sadly, it was lost out there in the wild somewhere. And so the question is, who can help find our poor lost Python called Darwin? And in many ways, who can help? Well, you could kind of talk to the duck and say, okay, when do you remember seeing Darwin last? Where does Darwin like to be? Or if you're doing the same thing with the Python snakes that are in your own project, phone a friend, take advantage of the people and the community. You've got PyBeach friends here now, Black Python devs, PyLadies, San Diego Python, all the other user groups, all are a great way to learn. And it's how I accelerated my learning early on, and still how I try and stop shooting myself in the foot when using something new. Something that I think is really important is when to take a break. And I think there are different motivations, but your time and energy are your greatest assets. You are your best at programming when you feel refreshed, when you're not exhausted, hungry, whatever. So don't be afraid to recharge. And I talked about mailing lists and forums and things, and I think even in our day-to-day interactions, I think it is so critical that we learn how to communicate well. Like me, who started off, and still am in many ways, a really, really big introvert who doesn't necessarily like talking to people. I would rather read a book or code something. It took a lot of practice. And I want to leave you with one thing that I have shared a few times about how to communicate well And we're in this great theater. And so using improv is really helpful for keeping discussions productive. In improv, there's a rule. In order to keep the scene going, you use yes and as opposed to no, because no is a conversation stopper. Now, the other thing I've learned when working in open source is try and keep it on the topic at hand and try not to make it personal. It is super important, and it makes it easier for everybody else. So, question-driven development. We've talked about how it can be used in AI, Python, and even with our communication. The steps, remember, are inquiry, ask questions, experiment with the thing that you're using, challenge the results you're getting. Are these results right? Am I, creating something that isn't gonna corrupt somebody's database or, transfer all your money to somebody else's bank account? Those things would be good to challenge before they happen. And then continue to repeat it. So what motivates us? Success, improvement, connection with other people, having some fun while doing it. I found this quote from Donald Knuth that actually I thought was a really good view on motivation, which is look at how to make the computer do something for you and really focus more on explaining to human beings what we want the computer to do. So my own personal approach with that is build tools that welcome. I want users to use my tools, so I'm going to try and build them in a way that makes them accessible and useful to use. Documentation that empowers, and it doesn't necessarily have to be written documentation. It could be videos, it could be 5-minute YouTube shorts, whatever works. But whatever's going to empower somebody to do the next thing. And to create communities that include. I firmly believe, from all the time I've spent in the sciences, that the best teams are diverse teams. People who bring different viewpoints to the table. And so include. You never know what you'll learn from somebody else, whether they're older than you, younger than you. I once had a 7-year-old with wearable electronics that I learned a ton from when I was working at a community makerspace. So you never know. So I'm going to leave you with a question. How will you guide your Python career and code to success? And I'm going to ask myself, do I believe you will succeed? Maybe ask yourself the same question. But I do believe, yes, and you will succeed. And I hope you will enjoy the ride that makes it fun, worthwhile, and fulfilling. And enjoy your time at the rest of PyBeach. Thank you. And I have no idea, Sarah, how I did on time. I only give keynotes once. I never repeat the same talk twice. So you've got the one and only, but it comes with the risk that time can go kind of wacky. If I have time for questions, I'm happy to take some. If not, I will let you get on with your conference, meet the people that are sitting around you, and just have an all-around spectacular day. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks as much as I know I will. Thanks.